the arrangement of sounds in an artful or deliberate manner creates a kind of what we call rhythm. That's what we're talking about in general. All of this is rhythm, but next week it'll be more detailed aspects of sound, taking in alliteration and assonance. We'll get to that next week. What the pattern aspect of it that continues what we did last week was we were talking about relationships. Just last week when we sat with Professor Kohlbrenner talking about metaphor, we were trying to discern, trying to perceive the relationship between sometimes two unlike entities, the tenor and the tenor and the vehicle, between two different parts of experience, and also two different people, how to understand what Mary Oliver or what John Keats feels as something analogous to the way that or Maya Angelou feels to how I feel. And that discrimination that discernment, perception of a subtle relationship, a subtle pattern. And also we started doing that on a literary level. I would say, this reminds me of Adam's Curse. This reminds me, even though, and we saw that first in the first poem that we dealt with in metaphor, Sonnet 73, in direct relationship to Ernest Saint-Vincent-Millay. That is the work of becoming a reader. Starting to see voices speaking to each other, listening for the resonances, listening for hidden echoes, whether in one text or between texts, or most importantly, between the reader and the text, between you and the text. And hearing how other people might hear things differently. That ability to discriminate, to perceive patterns is still among the rarest, most refined skills of humanity. It's what computers do all the time, if you think about it. Computers are marvelous at pattern recognition, discerning faces, finding patterns in traffic or numbers, but they still can't do this. Maybe one day they will. They cannot perceive the relationship between metaphors. You still need a human intelligence to do that. It's simply beyond pure algorithm. And finding those relationships, finding those patterns can be very difficult. A computer can hear the pattern very easily in Dougie Fresh, in all of the sampling that has followed La Di Da. I'm sorry we didn't get to the end of it. We can go back and listen to more of it at the end of today. But La Di Da, the hip-hop classic from the mid-'80s by Dougie Fresh, who my sister actually got to meet. He's an eccentric figure, Dougie Fresh, the beatbox, and is also something of a philanthropist in public health, where my sister got to work. He worked with a foundation that my sister spent a few years working for. A computer can hear those patterns very easily in James Brown and hip-hop. That's actually a lot of how Spotify works. But it cannot necessarily hear or understand or make sense of the interruptions of those patterns, the kinds of things you heard about in the videos, how the same kind of, let me explain it this way, the same kind of sampling, the same kind of adaptation of La Di Da Di from the hip-hop classic from 1985 by Slick Rick and Dougie Fresh, that's what we were just listening to, it has been sampled scores of times by Notorious, by Miley Cyrus, many, many times. It can hear that difference, just as Shakespeare, as Ben Crystal was saying in that video, he took the iambic pentameter of Marlowe, Christopher Marlowe, but changed it up a little bit. It's not that different. And then there's actually iambic pentameter in John Milton, but without rhymes, blank verse. That is also a kind of adaptation. So to understand these permutations, the disruptions, why this is being done, that is the work of a human. Now, so that's the pattern recognition, moving from the eye to the ear, and understanding the tradition. Since people have been playing, Dougie Fresh was not the first person to take his mouth and to make all kinds of funky sounds with it, to make patterns and to make it sound interesting. I guarantee you it didn't sound the same, but the bards of the Homeric era were doing the same thing. The Razals, the singers of the medieval of medieval Arabic singers and Persian singers and Jewish. They're doing the same thing of taking the ability to create sound that is invested in the human voice and turning it into a kind of pattern that has meaning. That's the abstract. That's the introduction. Now, can you do this? Of course. You're doing it your whole life. The proof of it, we're going to use these we're going to use obviously many poems, but we're also and some poems that we've already read. There aren't too many new poems for this week or next week, but we're going to use evidence. We're going to drill ourselves and learn how to do this using very simple but still fun material. We're going to use the hip hop. We're going to continue doing that. We're going to try to understand how Akala, that also hip hop artist who did Sonnet 18, how he did that in that video that you watched. And we're also going to use, as you may have seen already in the links for this week, nursery rhymes. Why nursery rhymes? They're super easy. They're fun. You don't have to worry about the meaning of it. And if you ever get crestfallen, you ever get discouraged about, oh, I'm not going to learn this, and most of you are. I can see from the homework that most of you are already learning this, and I'll share with you the point distribution right now. So you can just for proof, this does not show any. Where is it? Safari. This doesn't show any individual feedback, but it gives you a sense that most of you, there are people who are struggling, right? There are people down here, but for the most part, people are clustered 85 to 100, showing good evidence with a median of 88 and an average of 80. Average should always be around 80, but the fact that there's a big dispersion with people clustered here shows that most people are getting it. These people include native speakers and foreign speakers. This also includes some native English speakers and some English learners, but it is satisfying to me that just watching those videos gives you guys a good grounding. So if you ever get discouraged, one of the points in the nursery rhymes is to remember that babies can do this. You do this as a very, very small child, and all of you have the ability to discern accent, to find the beat. We may not be recording ourselves in classic songs of hip hop. We might not even be writing our own nursery rhymes. But the fact that you can do this both as a speaker of English and as someone who intuitively grasps the beat of a nursery rhyme and also can be moved. It's kind of, you can hear a funky drummer, you can hear la-di-da-di, and you hear the beat, right? You can move. Some of you are professional dancers. Some of you can move. Some of you are terrific dancers. Some of us have bad rhythm. I have pretty bad rhythm, but you can hear it. It's in your body. As several of those videos says, it is literally in your heart. Meter and beat is not something that is external to you. Sometimes we need to still ourselves. We need to listen a little more carefully, but we're going to get it. All right, that is our philosophical instruction. Now, how are we going to do this? We're going to there are 3 different skills that today, in the next 50 minutes, 45 minutes, we are going to master. First, we are going to discern basic stress, where the beat falls in any given word. That is what the homework was aiming to do. But we're going to do it also just drilling ourselves. So just to hear where stress is, that's the basic first step. Then we are going to translate that as the videos we're doing, but we'll do it at a slower step. And this is somewhat of something of a review. We're going to use the stress. So first is stress, non-stress. That's the basic step. So to identify stress. Second is to translate that into the meter terms, not the meter terms, the terms of rhythm, feet really. So I'll call that that's the iamb, the trochee, anapaest, dactyl. There are also pyrrhus and spondee, but we're dealing mostly with iambs and trochees for the most part, for today at least. And third, we are going to just try our hand getting to know how to do this, how to do basic scansion in a line of poetry. Once those 3 skills are in hand, you actually are off and running. And this will allow us on Wednesday to do more work. Good. All right. So I'm glad we can share our vulnerabilities. Hanin and Sarah showing, this is not something that everyone can do innately. Some of you can, and not even all of you who speak English as a native language. We're going to do part of this in breakout rooms. So we're going to do about 15 minutes now all together. And then we're going to do, after we'll just drill it. We'll just practice this exercise for the rest of today in breakout rooms. Today and the beginning of Wednesday are different than the rest of the class in that we're just learning a skill. It's also a bit different than the rest of the class in that there is one right answer. There aren't two ways to identify the stress of table. There is only one right way. I'll take that as our first example. Well, table's a bad word. Let me get a better one. I'm just looking around my room. There's only one right way to scan, meaning to identify the stress of window. So it's different, our class today, in being that there is one right answer for every question, not several different perspectives that each can be correct as long as they are supported by evidence. There is a right answer. And second, we're working on actually a skill. We're always doing that, but here it's a little bit more overt. Let me do window, and I'll do it for myself. And then we're going to take word turns. We'll do different words. I usually use your names. That's what I will do also, just to practice more of the stress, unstress. Now, to start just very basically, this was all in those videos, and they did a better job. So it was an advantage that you guys are learning this way, because I would just stand in front of the board and say what I'm about to say, and it's much more stale, boring, and confusing. There are in almost every language, not every, but almost every language, a concept of syllables. Phonemes that go together, groups of sound that aggregate, that combine into words. Different language groups use syllables in different ways. Southeast Asian languages, Chinese, Cantonese, Vietnamese, they use them, Thai, they use them as pitch. So the same syllables can be used going up, going down. Tonal, those are called tonal languages. Those are actually most speakers on earth, if you actually count it up. The single largest group. Western languages, from Greek, Latin, English, German, use a lot of Spanish, use an emphasis, use stress. These are languages where it doesn't matter if I'm saying window, 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 which would be different words if I were speaking Thai or Viet or Chinese, but I need to put the stress always, no matter what tone I use, in the right place. The stress meaning there are two different syllables in window. It is indeed a trochee. The stress goes on the first syllable. We'll get to the trochee. I'm leaving those terms of that's step 2. Most of you have already done this, but the simple step 1 is to recognize that the word must be pronounced window, not window. If someone says, please, would you go open window? They're talking Borat. That is not English. If someone says, please, tibul me what? Put that on the tabul. The word is table, right? Give me computer, right? That is wrong. The word is computer. All of you know this. This is not hard business. It's a trochee window. Table is actually also a trochee, but it's a little more confusing because it's hard. All of you will hear that it is 2 syllables. It is a pencil. Pencil? What language are you speaking when you say pencil? For it to be English, it must be a pencil. Who knows this? Your 2-year-old daughter. You, when you first started speaking English, whether you were 1-year-old or 5-year-old or 10, you all know this. This is not complicated stuff. So we can confuse things by talking about stress and unstress. We are going to confuse it because poets get to a much more advanced level where they're placing the stress on a specific word. Double, right? But it must be pencil, also a trochee. Now try it with your name. You can do this silently. You can speak out loud. No one's going to hear you. Each of us can try it with your name or the names you see on the screen. We have a lot of Daniels or Danielles. So that's actually two different words in this class. There are a lot of Daniels. There are two Yuvals. It's not Yuval. If I say Yuval, I'm mispronouncing your name for the two of you. If I say Danielle, I'm calling one of the girls. Daniel, I'm probably calling one of the guys. Just go try it silently with everyone that you have here. You could use your parents' names, your kids' names if you have. There is one way to say most of your names. Some names are interesting that they're different whether you are speaking to in English or in Hebrew, like Yael or Yael. Both are actually correct, but if you say Yael, you're probably speaking to an English speaker. Yael, you're speaking in Hebrew. You could try it with names that are less familiar, like Sondos. I don't know how you pronounce your name. Is it Sondos or Sondos? You can unmute yourself. You can tell us.
Sondos.
Sondos. So it's a trochee. And if someone says Sondos, they don't know you very well. Exactly. You hear it. You know it in your heart. Your ear processes this immediately. Okay. Let's take 1 minute. I'm going to let me see if I close this. No, I didn't close la-di-da-di. I'm going to put la-di-da-di again on the back because all it is a beat, la-di-da-di. And just practice. Let's see. Let's give it exactly 1 minute. Hopefully it won't be too profane of a section. And you guys can just practice it with names because it's very easy and it's very immediate. Use your names and your kids' names and your family's names, and your brother and sister's names. And then we'll continue on to the next section, which is applying the feet name to this idea of stress. Sorry, I want to do the sound.
To do, just crying over me and she was feeling blue. I said, don't cry, dry your eye. Here comes your mother with those two little guys. Her mean mother stepped up, said to me, hi. Looked Sally in the face and decked her in the eye. Punched her in the belly and stepped on her feet. Slammed the child on the hard concrete. The bitch was strong, the kids was gone. Something was wrong. I said, what is going on? I tried to break it up. I said, stop it, leave her. She said, if I can't have you, she can't either. She grabbed me closely by my socks, so I broke the hell out like I had the chicken pox. But she gave chase. She caught up quick. She put a finger in the face of MC Rick. She said, why don't you give me a plane so we can go cruising in my OJ? And if you give me that, okay, I give you all my love today.
Okay, so you also hear when hip hop is successful. I mean, in hip hop that you're going to hear, rather than just kids sitting on a street corner, they always fall on the beat, right? That's what they're doing. They always fall exactly on the beat, and your ear can hear that too. Now, as for the names, I hope you guys are getting this. There's one way to say Shoshi, I guess would be if you're someone speaking Hebrew, and this is something you can recognize with your names and with simple words around you. Anything, walking down, and it's obviously easiest, by the way. This will get actually harder with shorter words. So when there's only one syllable, I'll call that monosyllabic. When there's a one-syllable word, a monosyllabic word, it could be a little harder because a monosyllable word doesn't necessarily have stress. It depends on its use in a sentence. Get out. But get and out can be in a different sentence. Get me my coffee. When it's a two-syllable word or a three-syllable word, there is usually one single correct way to say it. Obviously, some words are a little confusing because it can be both a noun and a verb, and that depends on it. It depends on the use. But there is one way to say building, right? Okay. Everyone got this. So I'm glad you can get good. So there's a lot of dactyls. Right. I'm just looking at the comments. Good. So I'm glad you guys are engaging this. So now you understand the second part as well. This is even more boring. So the videos were correct. Videos were useful in applying the names of the feet. All those names are these ancient Greek names applied to particular patterns of stress. So once people figured out that there is this idea of stress very early on in the history of making sound of humanity, there was this concept of, well, let's put those in repeating patterns. That's what the beatbox guy, Dougie Fresh, is doing in that song. Dun and dun and dun and dun, dun and dun and dun and dun. It's what Shakespeare is constantly doing with the iambic pentameter, as you saw in the video. Dee dum, 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 right? And then breaking up here and there. Those are trochaic and iambic, respectively. Putting these terms, putting these patterns of stress, unstress into a regular rhythm is the work. That's what rhythm is. And we have four main ones, four different patterns that we deal with. Sponsi and Pyrrhus, the Pyrrhic and Rondaic meters we're going to put aside here. Those feet we don't really deal with in this class because they just confuse things, and they're generally used to disrupt. It's extremely unusual to have a whole poem in Amphibrach and all these other ones. We're not going to use those. We're just going to deal with the four main ones: trochee, iamb, those are a pair, dadum, as opposed to iamb, dadum, and anapest, dun dun dum, and dactyl, dum dadum, dum dadum. Words stressed, unstressed, unstressed. Dactyl, they didn't mention it, but a dactyl the word comes from your finger, like a pterodactyl or dactylic. Dactyl means finger in Greek. The reason is because your fingers have one long part and then two shorter parts. A longer part at the bottom, then two shorter parts. That is the shape of a dactyl. A dactyl is a stressed, then unstressed, unstressed. Key thing to remember, someone write this down. The iambic and trochaic are 2 syllables, while still being 1 foot, while anapest and dactyl are 3 syllables, but are still only 1 foot. Meaning that trochees and iambs are made up of 2 syllables each, da-dum, 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 but they still only count as 1 foot, and anapest and dactyls are made up of 3 syllables each, but are still always just 1 dactyl, 1 anapest. Capiche? Got that? That's actually one of the only confusing things about this whole business. Ha 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 ha. That is a trochaic. He he he, he he he, he he he. Each one of those is only 1 giggle, so it's only 1 foot. But the second he he he, someone who laughs like that, has an anapestic giggle. He he he, he he he. Right? That would be 3 syllables going every giggle, but it's still only 1 giggle. They're still laughing only 1 time. That's what we have to get for that. Now let's try to do this for real. Okay, folks? We're going to go down to step 3. Here we have let me see this, make sure this turns on. My trusty assistant went out of here. Let's see, someone can send Matan back in here. Matan, somehow the plug got lost in the wall. What we're trying to do now, let's see if this works. He set this up for me, my little 9-year-old. Most of his class is in Bidud. He is not. Let's see, iPhone via cable. Stop sharing sound. Let's hope this works. Is it working? Do you see give me a thumbs up either?
See a black
There we go. I see it. All right.
We see it.
You see it now?
Yeah.
Sonnet 18. Okay. Now, oh, that's bad. Let's see if we can do this a little better. There we go. Okay. So, let me see if I can erase. So I'm good. My son's a lot better. That is for sure. Erase, 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 erase. Okay, good. So what we're going to do now is we're going to learn how to do this on a baton. Good. You came back. Look down there. The plug went into the wall, and the connection is too slow. I tried to push it in, but it went into the wall. Say hi to everyone. Wave hi.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, now get to work. All right. Here's what we need to do. We're going to try to figure out how Akila, you all saw the video, that really amazing video where Akala, whatever his name is, I've never heard him outside of the context of this video. You saw him doing Sonnet 18 to the hip hop. Did you guys watch that? You can shake your heads yes or no. You did see it. Awesome. Okay. So it's like an amazing, it's an amazing party trick what he does there. How did he do it? How did he turn this text that we have been good. So how did he take this classic, this canonical text of English literature and turn it into we're taking apart the shelves here, and turn it into a wrap. You need the tools? We're doing home repair at the same time, so you can do everything on Zoom. Go get the tools. The text was one you know, and I'm going to keep the chat open here. So I'm going to talk for a few more seconds, and you guys can ask questions along, because in a few minutes you are going to go into breakout rooms and do the same thing, but with the nursery rhymes. Got it? That's our plan for the rest of the day. I'm going to show you what Scanch now looks like. We've talked about stress and unstressed, non-stressed, unstressed. You guys know how the different feet fit onto this. Now, what is actually your task? How do you show this? I can ask you these kind of artificial questions of, is this line trochaic or not? Is this anapestic? Iambic? I will ask you those questions for the sake of getting the right answer. Now, but the real skill, and this is what we are working up to, is to do what that professor did on the piece of paper. That's what we're going to do right now, to show how the scansion works. So for today, we're going to do it artificially all together in a group. And then for Wednesday, we will all take, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take a piece of paper and we're going to do this ourselves. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Now, the way I recommend everyone start doing this, some of you are ahead of there and can do this on your own. You can find the pattern of stress and unstressed on your own. Great. For the rest of us, the mere mortals, for whom this is difficult, Phemius, the bard at the beginning of the Odyssey, how do I recommend you start? I recommend you start with the disyllabic words, the words that are more than one syllable. Which one is that here? Compare. Which words are here? You could write it in compare and?
Summer.
Summer.
Summer. And in the second line, there's lovely and temperate, which has 3 syllables, temperate does. Darling. Good. So let me start there. Compare. Whoever said it said compare. That person, whoever it was, did not say, oh, what did I just do? I turned it. That person did not say compare. The person said compare. So there are two different symbols, and you saw that in a lot of the videos. There's that little boat and a slash. The boat is or the little bow, whatever, however you want to say it, is unstressed. The slash, the little line, means stress. Let's now do it on the page. Compare. Compare. Word is summer's day. Summer's day. Where should the stress go on summer? How do I say the word summer? I say it summer, meaning stress.
Present.
Unstressed. Beautiful. Now I have the hard work ahead of me. We can keep doing this, by the way. Lovely. It's not lovely. Lovely. So in these words, these disyllabic words, there is a pattern of stress and unstressed. Let's try the harder word, temperate. Temperate. Not temperate. So per is definitely unstressed. Temperate?
Is this
No,
Anna?
it's temperate.
Is this Anna?
That was a little harder. Okay, now let's fill in all the blanks. Let's go back to the beginning of the poem and let's try to figure out the rest of it. We have the very beginning of a pattern here. Only the very beginning. What do I mean? Your brain can do this, but so too can a computer, I'm sorry to say. So far, all I can tell is that there are no successive or consecutive stresses, or unstresses. So far, every time that I see one, after it I see the other. I see so far an alternating pattern of stress and unstress. That gives me a hypothesis of where to go. Your brain is a smart one, you're a university student adult. You can start thinking, okay, let me see if it's going to work to continue having this alternating pattern. Shall I? Well, it could be shall I, but let me guess. Maybe it's shall I compare. It can be. Now, I won't deny you. Oh, my son got us all frozen. Oh, here we are. Matan, you get it to 16?
I'm gonna need a flashlight. I can't see.
Okay. You can use the phone here. I'm not using the phone. Shall I compare the? Shall I compare? It's definitely the. Shall I compare the two? That seems to make sense. If you just read it to yourself, you could do that. We're all muted. Shall I compare the two? A summer's day. That makes sense because it shouldn't be. Shall I compare the two to a summer's day? Shall I? Is the question is shall I compare the two a summer's day? Let's do another line before we draw any inferences about this.
Dr. Feldman,
Yeah.
with the temperate, is this, I'm slightly confused, is this an I am or?
The
'cause
word
it's not
itself
an-
is
it's
nothing.
not-
Yeah. The word in isolation has a very confusing, I won't even give it to
Yes.
you, has a very confusing Greek name. It's the opposite of amphibrak. But that's not what's important for us. Even though the word itself in isolation, if I were asking you on the, you wouldn't have had the answer had I asked you on what
Exactly.
is the meter, what is the beat, the rhythm, what foot is the foot of, describes the rhythm of temperate. But when it's used in this poem, and this is what good poets do, it fits into the overall rhythm of the line or the poem itself. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is we're taking today, this is our work today, I should have been a little more explicit about this, to move from figuring out the rhythm of individual words, which you've proved now using names, using hip hop, using the homework. You can do it with individual words, but now we're trying to figure it out for an entire line, a whole verse. And from there, we're going to go to an entire poem. That's the transition we're making today. So, ordinarily, I would say temperate, the way that I say it, is that it's unstressed, so Amy. But in this poem, it is stressed. And I know that because it is going to rhyme with date, by the way. So what did I just fill in here? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. We can keep going. Rough winds do shake here's another disyllabic word. And the word is not Darlene. It's the Darlene family. Darlene buds of May. And here's summer again. Summer's lease hath all too short a date. That's how I'm sure that the temperate is meant to be articulated. It has to rhyme with date. Now, we can stop here for a second. And I just want to do the next two steps of scansion. The next two things we have to do are we're going to divide this pattern into the individual feet. They're already there, but we do another step that is just with vertical lines like this. I'm going to use a blue marker to divide the feet up. And then we'll be able to identify which you can already, probably most of you do this because you already know the answer. We're going to identify what is the rhythm and meter of this. Should I put the vertical lines are meant to separate the feet. Now, separating feet is not the same as showing a full word. For instance, summer here in the fourth line, and summer, if I want to divide the feet, it goes like that. It goes right in the middle of summers. And summers, these says which and short, this is a little badly drawn. Rough winds do shake. There's another place where this happens, or darling, a third line. Rough winds. Now what I'm doing is I can tell that what I'm finding here are a lot of iams. And it's also the darling is going to go right in the middle of that word, darling. Now let's just finish this. Since it seems that what I have are a lot of unstressed stress, you've studied, so you know that those are called iams. I'm drawing the vertical line, the scansion, in between each iam, in between each foot. Here again, it happens. I'm more lovely. The E should have been on the other side. Small little error, sorry. I guess I can technically go back. There, lovely, and more temperate. Okay, how many iams do I have here? Let's do another, let's figure this out. This is the work of scansion, by the way. You saw that on the pages that those professors did on the videos. This is what your page looks like after you do scansion. Of course, for those of you who have somewhat decent handwriting, it'll look more decent. There's just one more step. So Danielle, Stephen, please, your question?
I have a question about temperate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I didn't do very well on this test. I think as temperate, for me, when I say the T is stressed. So I thought it was dactyl.
It could be. I mean, so that's what I was saying to Amy. I said that a little sotto voce, but temperate, to me, is also dactylic itself, but not in this particular instance. In this poem, it's being used as, because he's pronouncing it temperate. It might have been just how it was pronounced at the time. And the way I know that is because it rhymes with the rhyme, which a phenomenon we're going to deal with next week, rhyme. It rhymes with a date. Temperate rhymes with short a date. And so I know that he's voicing, this poem, this text is voicing that last syllable, and it is using it as stressed, unstressed, stressed. But I agree with you.
Then it's
What's the weather today? Today the weather is pretty temperate. That's how I would say it. And maybe you would too.
So
But let's not.
Sorry.
In the context of this poem, yes, it is stressed.
So it's anipest or whatever, anapest.
It's actually not. It's something else, but I don't want to give you another name. The word temperate by itself is stressed, unstressed, stressed, which has yet another, there are a million, and our expert in our department is actually Dr. Shupek. There are a million words of rhetoric, and all these, the Greeks and the Greeks and the Romans loved this idea of studying sound and studying turns of speech. They have a name for everything. There is a name also for this pattern. It is completely irrelevant to us. I don't care about temperate alone. I care about temperate as it's being used in this line, in context. Okay. Anybody else have a question here? Let me.
I actually have a question.
Yeah. Let me just see who this is. Hannah? Tamar, okay, yes.
I understand the dividing the poem into rhythms, when we're taking it apart like this in front of us. But when someone is doing a reading of the poem, do they have to actually follow the? You can interpret it with whatever.
Yeah, you've been to many Shakespeare performances in your life. They don't read like this, but what we're going to get to is I'll show you why it actually still plays a role. We're going to get to that where, and I think Ben Crystal, this Shakespeare performer, and in the third video, he also does a good job saying like this actually does matter. Shakespeare knows this stuff. Shakespeare has as strong a sense of rhythm and meter as Notorious or any hip hop artist today, and Shakespeare's texts are, and not just Shakespeare, many classic texts that employ meter, do it for not just to keep the tradition going, but they do it knowingly, and there is meaning to be derived. There is significance to be found in their use of meter, where the stress falls, sound, where a point that this is far more advanced than us at this point. We're going to get to this only after the midterm. But Shakespeare himself, there were no stage directions in those days. The stage directions they have in your copy of Shakespeare are all much later by editors. But it has been argued, and I heard this, I'll tell you exactly, it was about Liev Schreiber, an American classical, in a lecture that I went to years ago, saying that the stage directions of Shakespeare are in the meter. It will tell you when to take a breath, what to do, how to move. It's in the meter, telling you exactly how to perform it. Okay.
Can I ask a quick question?
Can I say something?
Yes. And let me find who this is. Yes, Yuval.
It's
Okay. Oh, wait. I
yeah.
think
Oh,
someone.
okay.
We have
Okay,
someone
then.
else first. I see Yuval.
I have several questions, but I will just ask what's relevant right now. Just to make sure feet is always like an unstressed and stressed together. That's what.
No. There are many different feet. We have 4 that we're dealing with. Sometimes unstressed, stress. Sometimes stressed, unstressed.
No, I mean it will always be
Sometimes
like 2 syllables together.
it can be 3 as well.
Okay.
We're going to get to it. It looks like it's going to be on Wednesday, but I'm going to show you a very simple example of when it's 3. But it's in patterns of stress and unstressed, but it can come in patterns of 2 syllables at a time or 3 syllables at a time. Those are the ones that we are dealing with.
So, okay.
Our purpose is
it
to
won't
identify
be
that
just
it's I'm sorry?
It won't be just
No,
one.
you can't have, if it's all one, it's like impossible to find. That's a Spondee or a Pyrrhus, like everything's this, and it also sounds that boring. Get out of my house now, you will not stay. Like that's not a poem. Like that's very unpleasant to listen to.
Okay, and I think.
Or it sounds like or it can sound like a teenager mumbling. How was your day today? That's all unstressed, right? Maybe gonna sit down, right? That's all unstressed. So it's be very, very hard to make a poem like that.
Yeah. And another question I think you already answered. Is there any definition of stress, stressed, unstressed?
Are there examples of? I'm sorry. Of what?
Stress,
Examples of?
stressed, unstressed.
Okay, go to your class. Love you. Bye. Sorry, Yuval. One more time. Sorry. Are there patterns of what?
Unstressed. If there is a pattern of that.
Stress, stressed, unstressed? You
I don't have
could.
an
Yeah, that would be a
example.
disruption. Yes, there could be such a thing. Stress, stressed, unstressed. Yeah, it would be kind of an irregular pattern. You know, it would be a disruption to an otherwise pattern. And of course, I should also say right now, I mean, very clearly, a lot of contemporary poems from the past, let's say 60 years, don't use any stress or unstress at all. There's a lot of what's called free verse, which we will also study. Of course, there are hundreds of years of rhythmic poetry, of metered poetry. That's what we're focusing on. But something where it'd be unstressed, stressed, unstressed, like that would be a disruption, unless there's a prevailing rhythm that was already there, a meter that's already there, and then that line comes to disrupt it. There's no real way to describe what you're mentioning, Yuval. Okay? Let's finish this work, and then we'll break up into groups, and that'll be it for today. Let me go to red. So this is what it looks like now is all you need to do. You find you identify the stressed and unstressed beats. You can call it beats. We're using the word syllables, but you can call it a beat. Same because that's a musical term. You do the little boat for an unstressed one. You do that little slash over the stressed ones. Once you figure out the pattern, you break up the feet. In this poem, yes, it is only 2 syllables. In other poems, it could be 3. And as some of you have said, as Noah, Yonina, some Itamar that you're mentioning, there is a pattern here of unstressed, stressed. What my blue lines have broken up are a whole bunch of I ams. How many? Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Next line, same thing. 1. It's going to be a little hard to write here. 3, 4, 5, and so on. Each line, very simple, has 5 iambs. We figured out the rhythm. The rhythm was iambic. It was made up of iambs, iambic. It's made up of 5, or in older languages, penta, right? Penta equals 5, like the pentagon or a pentagram, a 5-sided figure, a pentagram or a 5-sided building, the pentagon, or a 5-sided shape. Here is iambic pentameter, the magic iambic pentameter. It is a line of poetry made up of 5 iambs. what is the meter of this poem? We usually, when we talk about meter, a meter needs 2 words. I mean, technically it's just the second one, but what is the meter of this sonnet? Let's see the question. What is the meter of sonnet 18? And basically all the Shakespearean sonnet, the answer is, there's only one right answer, iambic pentameter. That's it. So this is just a slow, boring version of what those YouTube videos did. If anybody's completely lost, you can certainly speak with me afterwards. It does get somewhat more tricky because Shakespeare likes to have fun, as was mentioned in also the third in Ben Crystal's video. He disrupts it and sometimes throws in an extra syllable here and there. But for the most part, and certainly in this poem in general, not entirely, in this poem, it mainly hews to the prevailing rhythm. Now, if there is an exception here or there of one syllable, it doesn't throw your whole premise out of whack. You don't throw out your whole hypothesis. If the entire poem is iambic, except for one line, you don't say, oh, there's no meter here. You just say it's iambic, and then you actually can ask, if you want to, why is that one line different? Last thing to show here before I stop the share is that there is some math behind it. This is the part that I never liked about music, but now I appreciate much more richly because I realize that the math is actually not hard. What is it? How many syllables are there? There are 5 feet per line. It's made up of iambs. Every iamb has how many syllables? Answer to yourself. Every iamb has how many syllables? 2. That's right. I see some of you mouthing it. If there are 5 iambs per line, how many syllables are in each line of this poem? 10. 2 times 5. 2 times 5 equals 10. This poem, you can count it down the side of the page here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I should do this one. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There are 14 lines. This is starting to look ahead, what we're going to get to at the end of next week, the form of a sonnet. There are 14 lines in these poems, 14 lines in a sonnet, 10 syllables per line equals, in a traditional sonnet, in an iambic pentameter sonnet, which means that there are 140 syllables in the poem. That's it.
Dr. Feldman?
Think about how many, yeah, and that's the last point. You could do this kind of math all the time, like how many syllables are here, how many syllables are there. There are only 140. In the question Devar is about to ask, I guarantee you there'll be more than 140 syllables, meaning more sound than is in Summer's Day. Go ahead, Devar.
I was going to ask, are we going to learn the difference between a Petrarchan sonnet and a
Yes, in 2 weeks.
iambic
Next week.
sonnet? Okay.
Yeah, depending on how quickly we master this, either end of next week or beginning of 3 weeks. Yes, that's form. Okay, that's it here, folks. Now, I want to go to the Limida. We're going to break up into rooms. I recommend actually for this, although we're all about diversity, I actually recommend that we do this by language because different languages, your native language. We're going to go into breakout rooms and we're going to, the assignment is going to be to use the easier of the 2 nursery rhymes that we're going to rely on just to drill this. So if you open either email, and I noticed, I see on the WhatsApp group, and I noticed that when I write the emails, when I put in media, the email doesn't keep it. The format of the media, videos and recordings are messed up. So you can always find them here on the, I can show you. You can always find all the links, all the material that I'm producing. It is on the Moodle page. So we've done all this. You guys got a good grounding. The homework worked out to my satisfaction very well. We're going to use the poems. We'll talk about these actual poems on Wednesday. Let's keep going here. Class on Monday. We're still here. We're going to break up into work breakout rooms. I recommend, and I will call them, I'm going to try to put, I'll quickly try to put names on them of per your language. Because some people who speak Arabic hear the word, I don't know, changing in a certain way that maybe you wouldn't if you were a native Portuguese speaker or a native Hebrew speaker. Your native language influences the kind of biases you have about particular sounds. So you can rely on other people. Some people get this really well, like Asala, Miral, Arabic speakers who can help. If you need help, you can ask them. Similarly, there are Hebrew speakers who hear this fluently, and there are English speakers who need help from others, English speakers. So we'll go into breakout rooms. It'll be randomly assigned, but I'll let you move. I'll put words on the breakout rooms, and if you want to move around, you can. What we're going to do just for the next few minutes, and then we'll continue with this on Wednesday, is to first work with the Llama Llama Red Pajama. And you'll have this on your screen. You could do it either, if this is something, and we will, by the way, for Wednesday, I will ask you to print out this page so that we can do it, unless you master it perfectly. But I would like you guys to print out the Llama Llama Red Pajama. This is missing the final syllable or final two syllables or final word, but they're easy to hear. And then we'll figure out the same kind of magic, how these hip hop artists, Camila Cabello and Ludacris, how they do their thing. But we are going to scan this very simple work. If you have Llama Llama Red Pajama in your house, as I do, we can also work with and I will bring my printed copy, not this one, but I will bring the actual book, and we're going to scan this whole thing. Let's start with it now. Then we're going to do a similarly fun but also easy drill with the Cat in the Hat. If you want to print out Cat in the Hat, you can see it's already this is the whole thing. I'm not going to print out this whole thing, but we can draw on the page here, and we'll do that also on Wednesday. In your breakout rooms, you don't have to scan the whole thing in advance. We'll do this together in groups. So we're going to start now. If people can get through all of Llama Llama, you have 20 minutes. You guys can stay as long as you want. I will go from group to group. This is just a practice. So on this page, this is the one, Llama Llama Red Pajama. And if you want to hear it read, you have the reading both from the author and the performance from, and this is just fortuitous because actually it was using Llama Llama for a few years before this was done, a hip hop station in LA that had this as kind of a stunt on its morning drive show. They had like B-list hip hop stars come in. Camila Cabello actually became more famous after she did this, and perform it. Okay, just try to figure out the same thing that we did with Sonnet 18. Stressed. There are 3 different steps: stressed and unstressed. Let me write this down in chat. First, you figure out stressed and unstressed. So mark the stress and unstressed.
Will we have to fill in the right words, like by the song? I don't know.
No, you don't have to do that now. But it becomes trivial once you figure out the stress. 2 is to separate the feet. And where's that vertical line? Here it is. And you could do this also using your keyboard. And 3. Okay, that's it. It's been a pleasure, folks. I'm turning off the recording, and you guys can try your hand at this in groups. Ask each other if you're really not getting it. Talk to someone who speaks your native language, who does get it, and hopefully we'll be able to continue this on Wednesday. On Wednesday, we'll go over this, the Anaduni, Llama Llama. I'll read it to my kids tonight. You can too. And if you ever despair of this, you'll remember that if a 1-year-old, if a 2-year-old can hear it, so can you. Often the reasons that people get panicked about this is resistance. I don't get it. I don't hear it. I'm not good at music. You all can get it. You were all 2 at some point. And if you got it when you were, this book, Llama Llama, did not become successful because it was used in college courses. It was successful because anyone hears the very strong, visceral beat. You can use any nursery rhyme to do this work. You can use anything that's popular now. Sandra Boynton, if you have any nursery rhymes, you could do it. I'm also in Hebrew or in Arabic. It's just making yourself open to it. So don't have any resistance to it. Just accept that this is something that is in your brain, it is in your ear, and you can do it. Stop recording, breakout rooms. All right, see you guys.